Thank you for joining me. Today is Sunday, December 29th. It's 2:10 a.m. Pretty good time to record here. And I'm going to be talking about some extremely provocative subjects that relate with... It's hard to say what they don't relate with, actually. They're topics that are fundamental to the structure of our minds and intelligence. And so everything that our minds and our intelligence touch, we touch sort of by representing in some way, at least if we're conscious of it. So, because we represent in this way all of the things that our minds touch, language and art, science and religion, they are instructed by our intentions and the rhythms of our activity and relationships, our eating, our breathing, our running, our walking. They're instructed by our humanity. And so we find our own mark in everything we are conscious of, because we are conscious of it through representations. And this recording is such a representation, and it's a waving sound that's happening in a gap. And the gap would be empty. You can see that just there, I let some of it be empty that I'm normally filling with a kind of a wavy motion. When we do that, we communicate. Of course, all of nature is this communication, and also is this intelligence. There is one thing that can, shall we say, travel at multiples of light, or a speed, a velocity, and that would be intelligence. It does. It's traveling all throughout the universe. We think that the fastest thing is light, but our minds are what we understood that with, and they participate directly in that. And the way that all this happens has been very mysterious. It will probably remain mysterious because, like water, it will exceed the toys we acquire to play with it with. Now, if we remember that they are toys, and if we play intelligently, our toys start to change in our hands while we're playing with them. And then we can participate in the intelligence of the universe instead of being spectators at the results of the solidifying toys that became most popular or most urgent or most well-known, which usually aren't very intelligent toys, are very competitive models, and they're very aggressive. And although some of them are absolutely necessary, they should never be as dominant as they are. And these include things like language and political ideas and religions, and arguments against religion, and war especially, and hatred. Ignorance that becomes entrenched as a model of the universe, or some rule of relation, is the lethal enemy of life on earth, our intelligence, mankind, and all of our relationships and families and dreams. And I want to talk briefly about an ancient story. It's one you might be somewhat familiar with. It's often discussed in the Bible. I'm going to use that model since it's probably familiar to most of my listeners and participants. And by the way, when you touch minds with me this way, we are participating together. Actually, you are with me right now across time. The reason that can happen is that connection that happens when your mind starts to sort of warble with whatever I'm producing. It travels backward in time in a number of ways we're not easily prepared to discuss. So in a very unusual way, each one of you and all of those people who may watch this later are helping me learn in ways that are very unusual right in this moment, and I'm doing it with you, even though you may watch this later, and I myself may watch this later and learn. That's part of the nature of intelligence that we don't ordinarily discuss, but I will today. The story I'm going to use is one of the fundamental riddles of our human, cultural, and linguistic history It's the tree incident from the Bible. In some ways, it might be one of the sources of riddles themselves for many cultures or peoples. But whether or not that's true, that's pretty hyperbolic. It's certainly one of the most important riddles that we have to play with, and there are some shocking things we can learn from examining it carefully, especially if we separate it from our common criticisms, expectations, ideas, religions, and understandings. Let's just take a look at the brief outline. There are the prototypes of humans, Adam and Eve. And actually Eve is supposedly made from Adam's rib while he's sleeping. In case that sounds chauvinistic or crazy, which it certainly did to me, allow me to remind you that even though Adam isn't the sun and Eve isn't the earth, I can imagine a model whereby the sun is in this part of the story representative of Adam, and the earth is in the unformed earth is representative of Eve, and she is actually like Saturn's rings, an orbital of gas and rock around the sun, like a ring, one of his ribs actually. And while he was sleeping, because he maybe hadn't ignited yet, that ring became a planet, and then it might even be that helped him to catch on fire. I'm not a scientist, and we don't need to be scientists because we can play very intelligently with the toys that the universe gives us, in the strange toy box that we're in, with gravity and light and animals and forests still for a few more days, and oceans and things, and each other dreaming. Yeah, we can play with these very imaginatively, and we want to. We were made for that. So anyway, there's a way that a woman could be produced from a kind of a man's rib, if we think of the sun as a man, the earth as a beautiful woman, and that she shines gloriously in his light, and he in turn is magnified unthinkably by her presence, and they are madly in love, and really co-equal in all things, even though she doesn't shout light like the sun does, and he doesn't reflect light so exquisitely and in a conversation like her surface. Yeah? And all because of their wonderful children, us who are listening to the story, made in light, told in light, on the earth. Could it be magic? How could it not be? It must be more than magic, more than science, more than all the stories. And it is. Back to the story. There's some kind of a divine intelligence afoot, and Adam and Eve are in a kind of a garden of some sort, and lots of things are happening, but they're told to stay away from a peculiar tree, which is said to grow in the midst of the garden, in the midst. And they're told that this tree is death, not to eat of it. So, before I continue, I want to say a couple of things. When you make a little ball, like a marble, right, in glass, or some people make art marbles, and they take glass, they put it in a kiln, it's on the end of a stick that has part of a cup, it's half of a cup, and there's a lump of glass in there, and they get it really hot in the kiln on the end of a rod, and they take out, they put the glass on the end of a rod, they stick it into a kiln, big glob of glass, and they take it out and they shape it in this wooden cup really fast into a ball, like a sphere. And then really quickly they have to separate the sphere from the lump of glass, and it makes a little tail there, a little umbilicus, yeah? Like my own belly button in a way, except it's always an outie on a sphere. It just works that way. And they have to hide that tail to make the marble perfect. And if you imagine the Earth as a planet or even a mind, and you imagine that it was just sort of separated from everything, you might imagine that it had a kind of a tail left over from where it was divided from everything else. And that in fact some force or even intelligence was involved in this division, and that this force or intelligence could be very advanced and even possibly a little bit arrogant, because it was such a great divider of things. That this force or intelligence, we might even think of it as an angel, could be dangerous to the children who were made of dust and matter, Matter, sort of stardust animated by spirit or lightning, and then, yeah, like you and me. And we all know that when children meet other children, they show each other their toys, right? Which I'm kind of doing right now with you. I'm showing you some my favorite toys in my favorite toy box, which is at once a universal one and a very personal one, at once celestial, and in every moment, as you'll see. They show each other their toys. And when I was little, my grandmother told me not to play with my belly button, and I would get sick, so I immediately ran off and played with my belly button and got sick. I didn't know why. It's my umbilicus. Yeah. It's the little tail from whence I came. It's the last place where I was connected to my mother. And we don't tend to think about that, but it's a kind of an antenna, right? It's a very powerful, charged thing. And to bend your attention back on your source, to bend your attention back over upon your sources like that, to recurse, to be reflexive, these are words that mean this, is in a way to die to unity and make a space like the pupil in my eye that lets light in or not. Is to see, is to know, is to die to a part of the unity, and to see the self-seeing in some way, to know that one knows. Thus, Homo sapiens, we know that we know. It's a little bit of a confusing name there because we sort of stutter on the word sapiens. So here's the point. In the garden there was a tree and that they weren't supposed to eat of, and it was in the midst. But the weird thing about this word midst is in Hebrew, which lots of Jews don't even know this, is that it actually relates to an unused Hebrew root called tavek. Yeah. I think it's Tate, Vav, Kate. If I'm not mistaken, I may be mistaken. I might have to correct that later. I'm not a Jewish scholar, but this means to cut off and to push, to divide apart. This word midst. It doesn't mean like one of the trees. Okay? It means the place where things were divided from the sky. And there's still like something there left over standing that could really be intense to get anywhere near that. Yeah. And so they're so curious about that. They want to get near that just like you and I want to get near sudden insight and amazing ability to know and learn, which is our nature again. If we have good purposes, if our purposes are good, this urge will not go astray, or will go less astray. At the tree was this force, the embodiment of this force, the angel. The angel of division, possibly the first angel. One of the fingertips of this intelligence that is a universal kind of intelligence. It is everywhere, in everything, as everything. But it has embodiments of a strange sort I can't explain, and I don't think we have to be religious or scientific or even, we don't even have to tell fables. We can just make toys and models, metaphors, yeah, which is what I'm doing here. So in this tree there was an angel, yeah, and the tree was a very strange tree because it was the tree of the structure of the garden. It was in the midst of the garden, so it was the tree of the garden's own structure. And the garden was unified, sort of like our right hemisphere, which means it was swarms of beings and flows with no specific identity, but all very intimate and knowledgeable, but no words, no distinction, no separation, no concepts. Because to have concepts, you have to break away and go up, then look down, right? And when you do that, that is surveillance. Literally, you know that stuff everyone's scared of these days, surveillance? That's how we get intelligence. We surveil ourselves, and we surveil the forces of the universe to get science, and we surveil the forces of communion to get religion, and we surveil the forces of nature to get an understanding of life, and the forces of distinction itself to get an understanding of mathematics. Yeah. We surveil from the standpoint of fictional other beings that might exist but don't. Perfect beings who could see everything. Where do we get this habit? Back at the tree where we got in trouble. Here's how it happened. God said, don't go to the tree. There's a problem there. It's dangerous. You guys are kids. There's another kind of child over there. There's a spirit, lightning, fire, knowledge child, and it's very powerful, and it lives in the tree. Where is the tree? The tree is the structure of the garden itself. Right? It is the way that the divisions in the garden are intelligent. It is the intelligent dividing thing. It is separation, without which you can't have language, knowledge, eyeballs, religion, words, anything. Nothing, you just get a speck. No separation, no time. No persons, no place, no ideas, no math, no intervals. What if all of the separation is extremely intelligent? What if gaps themselves are intelligence? Yeah. So the children, of course, Eve was fascinated by this idea, or whatever she thought or encountered, and they probably both were, and I'm kind of doubting it was Eve, but it doesn't really matter. It would make sense if she was. She went to where the midst was, the belly button of not only the earth, but like the universe, right? The belly button of mind, the belly button of the first thought, the belly button of the moment between, she was going to become a mother. She was going to get hit by lightning and become the mother of all thinking. Because without that moment at the tree, there's no knowledge, there's no language, there's no distinction. There's no separation. There's just flowing, dreamway, no identity, switching, flowing, dreaming, flying, swirling kinds of stuff. Like swarms. And they're intelligent, but it's a different form of intelligence. It's a playful, non-identified kind that learns more than it freezes things and preserves them, right? It just flows in learning. Like fire, like lightning. This creature in the tree is the other kind, the kind that can freeze things and make arguments from positions of perfect ideals. Yeah, that's the snake that lives in the tree. Eve wandered over. She saw the snake in the tree. It penetrated her sexually in the mind, in the seeing place of the heart. The apple was good for seeing. Yeah? It penetrated her. And when it did, she learned the art of distinction. Now, of course, they had a conversation, which I'm not going to go through, so I want to keep this a little bit short. They had a conversation which was very interesting. But essentially it put death in her, and it's an intelligent form of lightning death that just makes separations after separations. Now, if it's made intelligently, it becomes transcendence, which is far beyond all of our fictional models of heroes and messiahs, into something we don't even have words about. There are no books about it. None. There's no person who's a master of it. There's no enlightened, accomplished person of it. If there was, we would be transforming our world overnight. We're not doing that yet. We will. Now. Understanding this idea can help you to change and do astonishing things with your mind immediately. Anyway, Eve went to the structure of the garden, and there she met the snake, and they showed each other their toys, so to speak, right? They actually had the sort of sentience intercourse, right? The angel said, those creatures are made of dust, but they can surpass us. And the human said, those creatures are made of like intelligent fire, but God loves us anyway. Anyway, Eve saw the snake in all of its power, and she surveilled herself from above, from its position of possible judgment, criticism, perfect evaluators, and all these things, and she was frightened. And she saw that she was naked, and she realized that she was being surveilled now, and she began simulating that surveillance. And then she went back to Adam in this story, perhaps, and either brought him to the tree where he underwent the same thing, very likely, because he would want to see like what happened in him, himself, first person, he's a guy. But maybe she even just communicated it to him, and then they had the sticky poison that was intelligent separation that would later become formal language, and then writing, and then knowledge, and then authorities who were false based on arguments rather than living, based on ideas or concepts rather than forests, based on money rather than oceans. based on false power instead of the value of intimacy and relation that requires honesty and trust just to happen. Yeah. Instead of that, we can just pay each other now. We're very confused. We have representations spawning everywhere. Madly, photographs. We're competing with photographs. Directly. That's death. Right? Photographs live. They cost. I know where there are photographs where they're worth millions of dollars. There are stacks of them. They could save whole nations of people in a week. But they don't. Those people die. The photographs live. Nice and warm in their houses. Yeah. Our cars. Right? Representations, we compete with them. That's death. But the other thing about death is that it's knowledge. Now, back at this tree where we got death and knowledge, something really strange happened. They tried to hide their sexual organs, their organs of intimacy, the organs of relational intimacy that make way of intimacy. They hid those with a leaf of a very special tree, the fig tree. Interestingly enough, it has microscopic flowers. You can't see its sexual organ. So they hid their organ with the representation, because now they're representational, right? Now they make representations of things and compare them and stuff and make false evaluations that can't exist, except in fictional minds, like the hypothetical millions of minds inside the snake at the tree, which is the structure of unity, but also its opposite. And if you bend back what you see on the structure of unity, it shatters. Now, if you can ride that shattering intelligently, you get impossible intelligence. If you can't, you get schizophrenia and psychosis, hallucination, drug experience. It looks like intelligence, but it doesn't act like it, and it doesn't save worlds. The other, prodigy, that saves worlds. Everyone recognizes it. Einstein, Gödel, Rumi. Yeah, I'm naming men. Hypatia of Alexandria. Yeah. Susan B. Anthony. If you can take it and really, that force, that shattering force of death intelligence, right, and shape its where it breaks and how those breaks relate intelligently, based on relation, not just concepts, not just math or statistics, on relationships that are real and alive, like we're doing here now. Because I have no script and I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm trying to explore this with you, as you, for me and us together. So back at this tree, something weird happened, something crazy that we still act out, which is this. We realized we were going to be sexually surveilled. And so the women began to wear makeup, and the fig leaf was their first makeup. And that meant that was their badge of submission to sexual surveillance from now on, and to be sexual objects in every moment, even in the bathroom, even in wherever they are. They have to have the makeup on, so to speak. They have to be beautiful, so to speak. They have to be presentable as an object. And their makeup is the badge of acceptance of that which I renounce and reject utterly. It's a false representation that crushes the feminine intelligence in the man and the woman. I just reject it. I'm not saying it's evil, or even necessarily, I'm not saying anything about it except it's not human. And it's a sign that we've accepted a false standard of surveillance from above that doesn't exist. It's not real. If we got rid of that, we would all be living in a better world. Similarly, men, they wear the tie for the same reason. It's actually a representation of the penis, and they're saying, I am the penis, I am rigid, I penetrate. It's a big confused mess. It's all wrong. The man doesn't dominate. In fact, the man is wielded by the woman's innocence and beauty, and he's wielded so intelligently that when they bend back upon each other, they produce prodigy, not war. Incredible intelligence, not decimation. Decimation, that's unintelligent shattering. Yeah. So when we go back to the tree, we find out how we learn to surveil ourselves. Now we have two options. We can surveil ourselves relationally in excellence, in love, or we can surveil ourselves prosecutorially in law, right? Out of fear, which shatters intelligence and shatters unity. Yeah. So if we build surveillance systems that make us feel like the parent is cruel, and there's millions of possible judges. They're all judging us with every possible angle of approach to our thought, speech, hopes, desires, actions, urges. We will become psychotic. if we surround ourselves with brilliant minds who are encouraging and loving and lift us up and want us to rise to our highest potentials and actually inspire and keep reminding and lifting and encouraging and cheering us on, as is our actual nature with and for each other, the tree produces prodigy and the gate in the garden opens up. Literally. Religion or no. We get transcendent wonder, we get ecological, relational intelligence, we get relational intelligence with each other. The story in the Bible was not meant to tell us what was stolen. It was written by healers for their own children. They hid it in a code that would discourage people who would try to weaponize it and use it for their own gain. But they left it in a mode that people who were loving and playful enough could learn to understand and decode for each other, so that it would return our wings and unlock the angel with the spinning sword who guards the gate at the garden. That spinning sword is our own intelligence. And if we speak the password, which is each other's names, it opens. And what was shock, terror, fear, blame, complaint, law, court cases, judges, prisons, well, it becomes something we've never seen but we've always dreamed of, and that we've glimpsed in nature. Things we have names for but have never tasted, except but in their opposites. Mercy, justice, wonder, beauty, truth, liberation, music, reverence, adoration, fellowship. Communion. Share this. Let's take off the makeup and the ties and learn the rest of these interesting angles on these old stories that seem to have everyone fighting when we could be waving together instead. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Please share this with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Bye-bye for now.